The Law of Life. The first spell in this lore book is named after your favourite elf porno, Awakening of the Wood. And aptly, it's an explosion spell which does no armor-piercing damage, notably, so should only really be used on light targets, and it also causes a snare of minus 45% speed, and for 6 Winds of Magic you can't really go wrong. So you could just use it to wear down some of the lesser armoured enemies of the enemy army, but if they're stationary, you're not really making use of the minus speed, and if they're a cheap unit by themselves like this, you're kind of not really making the most of the spell because, well, you just hurt a cheap unit that's not that great anyway. So if you're going to use it on cheap units, you probably want to wait till you find a clump of them like this, so you can hurt a couple of units in one go and really maximize the damage that this spell can do, especially if you can fill that circular shape of it. If we want to make use of both of the strengths of this spell, we want to hit something that is both lightly armored and is moving so we can slow it down, perhaps to buy more time to shoot at it, although it's harder to land this spell well and do good damage when a target is moving, so I think there's a case to use it in either way effectively. There is also the case that you could make to just use it for its speed reduction, which can be handy against something like this. Skin wolves flanking us, buys us a little more time to shoot them and a little more time for my infantry to line up against them. You're going to do absolutely no damage with the spell to things like monstrous infantry and cavalry though, unless they're really clumped up maybe, but even then you're going to do very little, so this spell should always be aimed at lightly armored infantry. More expensive stuff like witch elves is always going to be a good target, but if you just want to slow something down like monstrous infantry or cavalry, it could be good there too. Next, to arguably the most important spell in this lore book, Earthblood. For 6 Winds of Magic, you can heal a unit for 7 seconds, 0.80%. Let's do some math on that first of all. So 0.80% HP, so that's nearly 1%, times the 7-second duration gives you 5.6% HP of your unit's health back. And if you were to hit the maximum 4 targets, you would do overall 22.4% of healing to your army. And that's pretty nice, right? But we have an upgraded version of Earthblood as well. The Overcast version will give us 14-second duration, same amount of heals per second. And if we do the math on that, 0.80% HP times 14 will give us 11.2% HP back to every unit you manage to hit, giving us a total, if you manage to hit 4 of your units, of nearly 45% HP's worth of healing to 4 units. So to ensure you really maximize this spell, you always want to aim to be hitting the max of 4 targets, of course. And naturally you want to aim to heal the better units of your army, better off healing 4 units of Grail Knights than healing 4 units of Peasant Mob, for example. You're going to get more out of the healing if you heal stronger units. Getting 4 units all in a small space though can sometimes be tricky, so even if you can only hit 3 units, well that's still pretty good, right? If you're upgrading it, you're still going to be doing 30-odd% healing overall, and that's pretty damn nice. Healing can be especially useful when you're fighting the tougher units of the enemy army, like these questing knights here. They're fighting chosen with great weapons, as well as my lord and my caster. So good to just try and keep them a little bit topped up while they fight a tough enemy. Also managed to get these battle pilgrims in here as well. That's just going to help them with their fight. So there can be an element of timing with healing, but otherwise you can just use it whenever to anybody who's lost health, and it's going to be useful, as long as they're a worthwhile unit spending that healing on. One powerful tactic you can use Earthblood with is to have your healer travel round with a small powerful party. In this case with Bretonnia, a bunch of cavalry all together. If you keep them all together, it can be easy to heal them all together. In this case though, I'm just going to send in 2 units, which is a little bit wasteful to use my healing on, but what I'm doing here is using the healing right at the start of the fight to ensure all the models' health stays up, and I won't lose a single model in this fight with these Nurgle toads. So you can see here, I've managed to take out one of the toad units, and if we check my army, I've lost absolutely no men from the 3 units that I had engaged. Mostly 2 were engaged, but you see here, still 60 men, still 60 men, still 60 men. So we took out an enemy unit without losing a single man. So that's using Earthblood to keep your health topped up when a fight begins. So that's Earthblood, a very powerful and very simple spell. Just use it to heal up your best units. Very powerful at the end of a battle in the end game as well. If you've got all your units spread out, you can bring them together so they're near each other, hit 4 targets, make the most of that magic power. To our next spell then, Shield of Thorns. Honestly, the most redundant and useless spell in this lore book. I wouldn't really bother with this. It's just overshadowed by all the other much better spells in the lore book. For 7 Winds of Magic, well, you could get Earthblood for 6 Winds of Magic, so that'll probably do more for you. The upgraded version might be a little bit more worth it. It doubles the damage for only 3 extra Winds of Magic, so maybe there's a case for the upgraded version. But if you really want to make the most of this spell, it's going to be good on single entities that are trapped in crowds because they're getting attacked all the time from all angles, and thus there's more opportunity there to get that melee reflection on enemies. At the same time though, you still have to take a bit of damage to do that damage, so it's just a bit of a weird trade-off. I probably need to test it a little bit more, but it can be used against infantry and stuff. But like I say, there's just way better things to spend your Winds of Magic on in this lorebook. Such as Flesh to Stone, a 60% physical resistance on one target, lasts 19 seconds, 8 Winds of Magic, not too shabby. There can be quite a few good uses of this spell. It's obviously a protection spell that will protect you from melee and missile damage. There's also an overcast version for 14 Winds of Magic that doubles the duration to 38 seconds. Very nice. So the natural use of this spell is to help a unit last and fight a bit longer. This can be useful if you want to ensure you hold a certain position for longer, just buying you time, or if one of your units has ended up in a bad matchup like this dragon fighting the anti-large council guard here, well, Flesh to Stone can ensure they don't suffer too much, or at least give you the time to get them away from such a fight, preventing a lot of damage. Or you could put it on whoever has to take on some of the tougher units of the enemy army. Like here, I've dropped it on Karl Franz, who is struggling to land, but he's finally found his way to take on a Doomball, who is of course a very dangerous enemy to take on. I love that the purple sun is all over this shot. It looks great. Brilliant. Thank you. This could be a good place for the upgraded version, as I've done here. It lasts a lot longer, so you can stay in there and tangle with the big boys. And as you can see here, it's definitely saving Karl a lot of pain from this Doomball. Another way you could use this spell is to cast it on some kind of flyer that you want to charge in to disrupt the enemy backline that may be a bit risky for it to get blasted to pieces. Probably not the best idea with your Lord here, like I've done, but I'm trying to disrupt some Skaven units so they don't bombard and poison all of my upcoming units. So we're kind of using this unit as a bit of a damage soak, which we can do with ground units as well. We could do it here with the Dread Saurian, give him that big resistance. He's got lots of health anyway. He's kind of there just to soak up damage, so that can be a good tactic with Flesh to Stone as well. But overall, a nice versatile spell that is very simple to use, very effective, as long as you don't use it on units that don't really need it, like if you're fighting clan rats, for example. Always a good Lord save as well if your Lord gets targeted by any other Lords and heroes pursuing it. A good way to protect them is with Flesh to Stone. Now to another one of the vital healing spells in this lore book, Regrowth. Costs 13 Winds of Magic, so fairly substantial cost. 0.80% heals per second for 29 seconds. Let's do the math on that. 0.80 HP times 29 seconds equals 23.2 HP that you will heal with the regular non-upgraded version of this spell. If you should do the upgraded version, it will cost you 18 Winds of Magic, so fairly pricey, but bumps you up to 1.2% of health, but still for 29 seconds, giving you 34.8% HP recovery. Very, very nice. It also recovers some vigor as well, which is nice, but that's never going to be a reason to use this spell. Now, to use this spell optimally, I would recommend only use it on single entities preferably. Lords, heroes, single entity monsters, etc. Maybe low model count units like chariots that only have a few models in them could also be a target, but for the most part, it's much easier and simpler to just aim for single entities. Because of a little mistake that I think is easy to miss that people might not realize they're making. And it's all to do with units with high model counts like cavalry and infantry. Notice these Empire Swordsmen have just under half of their men left in the unit, 54 of 120, so 60 would be half, they're just under that. And their health bar is also just under half. Now you might think that if you use Regrowth on this unit, their health bar is just going to keep going up and up and up, but what you might not know is that the health bar is a representation of every single man in the unit. And as you can see here, the health bar has now stopped going up, even though the effect is still going. And this is because, guess what, this is going to be a bit of a shocker, you might need to sit down. You cannot heal dead men. So the 66 men that are missing from this unit cannot be healed up, and thus you cannot get that health back. So it's a complete waste to use Regrowth, especially an upgraded version, on infantry and cavalry, because their health bar will pretty closely represent their model count. So it's typically going to be a waste. You could use it, but you would need to check the model count compared to how the health bar is to know if it's worthwhile. Maybe if the unit is fighting a tough enemy, like these questing knights fighting Chosen again here, that could be a way just to keep your health topped up while you're fighting them, like we did with Earthblood and the Bretonnian cavalry earlier. But that of course requires a lot more effort to check units and check their health, and it's just a lot more effort and micro to have to do, right? Which is why I recommend the much simpler approach of just using it on single entities, because you can't go wrong. It'll usually be a powerful unit, a lord, a hero, a monster, and that's just going to be good money to bring the health back to that unit. Nearly 25% health back with the normal version is very nice, and 35% health back with the upgraded version is even better. You can take the same idea as well with Flesh to Stone. You just use it when you're in a tough fight to give your unit a boost and to help them win the fight. That extra health for Carl here, definitely going to do him some favors. It's also a great way to bring CP back to the battle. If you don't know what CP is, I've got this video, which I will put at the end of this video if you want to check that out to understand it. Basically, the more CP you have, the more chance you have of winning the battle faster and bringing about the enemy's army losses to rout them all off, and that's going to be best done with single entity units that are going to have all melee CP. To our final spell then, the Dwellers Below, a very expensive spell at 17 Winds of Magic. 4 damage per second, but 100% armor piercing. You've also got the damage from the Dwellers themselves, which is extra damage per second and a speed reduction of 25%. Don't be confused here though by the contradictory bullet points that says strong versus character, but then also says weak versus single combatant. Last time I checked, character and single combatant are the same thing, so it's very confusing, but it also says strong versus multiple combatants, and that's really where this should be used. So kind of ignore the strong versus character bit. I think it's basically saying you should use this on multiple combatants, and if there happens to be a character in there, it's going to do some good damage to them. But otherwise, ignore a single character just on its own. This spell will do nearly nothing to them. There's also an overcast version for 21 Winds of Magic, which will increase the speed reduction from 25% to 45%. So this spell can do good damage to any kind of unit it hits with that nice armor-piercing damage. You can see it takes about half health off of these Streltsy here, but for 17 Winds of Magic, that's probably not really enough to make it worthwhile. We're also not using the speed reduction, so something like this situation, trying to hit a couple of strong units here, Black Orcs, very expensive armored units, we're going to slow them down to 45 speed, which is going to give us more time to shoot them, and the Dwellers are going to do some good damage to them, taking about half health of both of these units of Black Orcs. And as you can see, they partially run out of it, so we haven't even hit them necessarily very well, but it's given our wizard 530 damage done on his first spell. So it's incredibly powerful. I think you're really going to make the most of this if you can really fill up that circle shape of the spell itself with expensive strong units that might happen to be clumped up or grouped up. Drop this on them, it'll do tons of damage with that armor piercing. That's going to be how you make the most out of that 17 Winds of Magic or 21 Winds of Magic that you've spent. And of course, don't waste this on cheap crappy units like Skaven Slaves or Clan Rats. Use this on the big expensive stuff because you're paying a lot of magic for it. A nice strong damage spell though for the Law of Life. And that completes this guide on the Law of Life. Thanks to all these people who support this channel through Patreon. If you'd like to become a member to get access to the secret Discord and secrets and giveaways and all the secret giveaway stuff, there's a link in the description. Hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the future.